live here with Graham Chapman. How long have we been talking? It's probably been over.
An hour and a half.
Yeah. So we met, what, a week ago?
Mhm.
Yeah. And where did we meet? Was it on Facebook or Discord?
Discord.
Discord. Cool. And we're talking about human design. I've been sharing a bunch of stuff that I learned in the last week, even from some of the OGs in the space and some stories about Raw and things that we can talk about maybe even as we go here. But I got 20 minutes here before a meeting, and I thought it'd be fun to talk a little bit about my design to explain how I see it, interpret it, and what I've learned from it. But I think I'll try to do that in under 5 minutes, and then we'll bring Graham's up and then talk about his. So a lot of people on my feed and stuff won't even know what human design is. So I'm not going to get into too much detail other than to say this is me. This is my body graph. This is my blueprint or roadmap to who I am. And the more I pay attention to this particular GPS system, the more my life resonates and I vibe and I have what's considered called my outer authority. Basically my magnet or vibration that attracts opportunities in life and cool people like Graham to me. So a couple things. This is my personality, which is basically the imprinting of me on the day I was born. So the moment I came out of my mother's tummy at 12:18 a.m., this was the imprinting of the universe at the time, the world's oldest clock. So the sun, the earth, the moon, north-south node, and various planets. So that was my imprinting that day. But 88 days before, well, 88 degrees roughly, I think 88 to 89 days before, this is when my soul chose this particular meat sack for this particular incarnation of my life. So basically, kind of came together, and 88 days before I was born, this was the alignment of the planets and stuff at that time. And so when we're talking about personality or conscious, this is something that would be kind of aware to me, my life theme, I guess, the stuff I experience. And for the most part, a lot of this stuff lines up and it's kind of a knowing, like it is me. And the one way that I've heard it described that really helps is if you look at the black lines, this is called a gate, or if it connects between two of these things, it's called a channel. If it's black, it's coming from this side. So these are the roads that I've been traveling and they're familiar to me. The red are tunnels. You have to get into the tunnel to see the road, to experience it and validate it for yourself. So in other words, I am a hybrid of what I know and what I'm here to, I guess, experience. When I was born, when my soul chose this particular meat sack. And I got to say, like, I didn't used to believe in reincarnation. I just thought you had one kick at the can and you were done. Like, that was me 3 years ago. But through this experience, this to me is proof that that's not the case, which is really cool because I'm kind of here to learn in this life experience. And where I'm here to go to school and learn and experience is all the white stuff. So open head, because it's completely open. I tend to think about things that don't matter. Think about other people's problems. So it's a pressure center. It's a mental pressure center to think about things. And because mine's totally open, the best advice I ever got was that I'm just here to watch life like a movie. And the more I do that, the more relaxed it is. Like I'm just here to experience life and have it bump into me. So that's the open head. I have an open ajna, so that's seeking certainty or things that I'm uncertain about. My whole life is going to be about uncertainty because there's literally no definition here. So I can relax about that too. And so it's kind of how I went from having a very busy brain that felt like a toilet going around all day, every day, to being very, very quiet because I've learned that that's not my trip, man. So it just allowed me to relax. And so between plant medicine and meditation and breath work and all that kind of stuff, plus awareness that it's not even my problem to figure out in this lifetime, fucking cool. I just basically let that go. I have a defined throat. So basically, I can speak with confidence. It just kind of comes out of me. And the more I get aligned, the more clearly it gets channels out of me. I have a completely open heart or ego. So there's literally no lines coming to it. So this is all about seeking validation if I'm out of alignment. So someone said to me, like, I'm not here to prove myself in this life. I'm not one of those people. So 30% of the population have a defined ego. Those are the people that are creating chaos for others unknowingly because they've got the willpower to do things, and they amp other people up around them unintentionally, but it happens. So this was quite dangerous for me because I was constantly seeking validation by trying to rescue people instead of taking care of myself. So once I learned that it's, self-care is important, then I show up better. I resonate better outside. The opportunities and people that find me come in as well. That better that way. So that's the open ego. And if anyone's listening or watching to this and has that, if this is open, the best advice I can give you is don't say, I will do things. I will do this. I promise. I guarantee. Because I will ultimately let someone down, and that sucks. But when I let someone else down, I'm letting myself down, which then makes me feel invaluable. So now, when I make commitments in life, it's not even a commitment. It's like, I intend to be there on Friday. That sounds good. I'd like to be there Saturday. But if life comes along and something else comes along that's more aligned with what my body wants or needs, I don't feel like I've got a commitment that I've made to people that I can't live through. So people with that open, that's something that they can really benefit from. And all of a sudden you can go through life a little smoother. I'm a manifesting generator, so I'm a multi-passionate. And anyone that knows me will probably have said that about me. Like, I seem like a manic, crazy scientist trying different things all the time. I used to think that was something wrong with me. Now it's like, no, that's actually, I'm showing up naturally as me. And I am basically meant to jump around. So, manifesting generators have a strategy, and that strategy is to respond. Curiously enough, I had a great conversation this morning with Chapman, and he was talking about when he teaches human design, and he had like early knowledge of this. He doesn't incorporate strategy. He doesn't think that that's actually. I think that I don't want to. I'm paraphrasing, but basically, he said, especially for me as someone who's a quad left, who's very strategic. Listening to other people's strategies is terrible for me. I'm here to experience life as a 3-5, and so I should be completely ignoring strategy, and he doesn't teach it anyways. And I thought that was really cool because that was a new bit of information for me. But what does resonate is, my signature as a manifesting generator is, so my signature feeling is not joy, it's not happiness, it's not love, it's satisfaction. And that's like an engine purring, like me, that feeling, satisfaction is like, when I think about it, that is the most natural feeling in the world for me. Like, it feels better than joy or bliss. It's actually right for me, right? It's, when we were talking about vibration and frequency, like, it's a hum in my body. So if I'm in flow and I'm like humming, I'm like, oh yeah, I've hit the spot. That's where I want to be all the time. So when I'm not there, it's my not self, which is frustration. And so now I've gotten so good at identifying the hum of flow that when I'm frustrated, it's just so apparent to me that something's off. So what am I doing, or what is the person around me doing, or what's the energy, or what's the situation? And I immediately recognize that, because frustration leads to anger, and I don't want to get there. So I, but now the amount of frustration I have lately, because every obstacle is an opportunity to learn what's wrong with that situation. I go through the obstacle, and because I'm trying not to be frustrated, and therefore I get less friction in my life. I'm friction free, and therefore I vibe and move more smoother. So, which is interesting with that whole shark thing we were talking about earlier. Like, they glide very smoothly through the water. So that's even an interesting analogy. But let's get to you, because we've got 10 minutes here. So, I'm going to stop sharing my screen for a second, because I don't think we want to enter your birth. Are you okay with your birthday just being on here?
Sure.
Cool. All right. Should always check.
Yours was on there. Like, it's all based on that. It's fine.
Yeah. By the way, my favorite app is Neutrino Design. They've got a website version coming, but it's hard to display it on the screen here. And I use this Squirrel app, but can be frustrating at times. So otherwise, I'd be showing you that, because if you look into like your environment and cognition and stuff, there's some real and genetic trauma and your fears and melancholy gates. And they've recently added your dream state with more detail, like how you dream. Like, when you're lying parallel, you're actually a mammal, right? You're just getting deprogrammed. Anyways, it's a whole thing. Neutrino Design has way more detail in there for that stuff that makes it really easy to grab. So what's your birthday?
December 17th, 1990.
17th, December 1990. Correct.
Yeah.
Okay. Time.
Is 7:50 p.m. So 1950.
Okay. And we're what country?
The U.S. in Oakland, California.
Oh wow.
Yeah.
You guys keep losing all your sports teams.
We do. We do. Tragedy.
Yeah, I think they've all
One
moved to the States. Like, I think the Oakland Raiders and the baseball team's done too, right?
Oh, athletics. I mean, I live in San Francisco, so we still have some of the teams here. The Bay Area has teams, so I'm okay with it.
It's funny. I love that movie Moneyball, and I think now that I think about it, it was the analytics of that, like that movie and all the data and stuff that they used to put the team together.
Mm-hmm.
So interesting.
Yeah, I mean that was like the birth of using analytics in that way. Like it's an interesting story.
So, uh, so Graham, you're a projector. I can see
Mhm.
that here. And again, I don't want to profess to be a human design expert. I am just someone that's had 15 readings and gotten a flavor from different people. And like I was explaining to you earlier, my learning style is so focused that I actually miss all sorts of stuff because I just jump around. So you're going to get a smattering of stuff versus the more traditional readings. But let's go with this. So you're a projector. So a couple things. Well, I'll also preface this. As I said, on Monday I'm having a reading with a modern uptake of the human design system, and it'll be interesting to see what comes from that because she professes that 95% of the population are manifesting generators instead of the statistics that we've been hearing to date, which is 75% are generators, manigens, projectors, which you are, according to this, are 20%, manifestors are like 8%, and reflectors are 1%. Her calculations, which there's a whole backstory to that I'm hoping she'll share soon. It's very interesting. You might not actually be a projector. So even as I'm telling you this stuff, it's like, I'll just tell you what I see here. Um, so projectors, 20% of the population, you're here to guide the energy of generators and manifesting generators, as I understand. So even like when we're in conversation, like you can direct my energy. And that's probably why our conversation actually flowed so well as well, right? Where of course now I'm just consuming the whole conversation because we're doing this, but like I really felt like we were like vibing. It was great talking. So so you can see into my aura. You're basically looking at my G center, from what I understand, and you can actually like see and draw out of me. And so your strategy is to wait for the invitations. The idea is that you need to be invited into your circumstances, into relationships, into things. And so if you invite yourself in or you initiate, you'll end up not in the right situations for you. And so and this is not a life that I understand with my type necessarily, but I have some friends that like literally like, oh, I'm just waiting for someone to invite me, which is ironic because there's all sorts of projection of like, hey, I'm inviting you to this, and they don't respond. I'm like, well, okay, which one are you waiting for? Anyways, um, so when I talked about for me as a manifesting generator, there's the feeling of satisfaction, that hum, like that feels good. Your signature is success. So I wonder if that resonates for you, like the feeling of like there's nothing better than to feel success in what you're doing.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, I feel like I'm very much like into trying to cultivate some sort of like expertise, and it relates to the waiting for the invitation, where it's like, hey, like I am really good at like this certain thing, and then it's like that almost creates a situation of like you're being asked to do something, and if you do it well, you feel successful. And I definitely do seek that, so that resonates.
And you probably love being recognized. Like it's a
Oh yeah, and I hate not being recognized. Like
yeah,
the opposite is very true also. Yeah.
yeah, cool. So when you're not self, you're bitter. So I wonder if think of times when you feel bitterness, that is you. There's something dissonant in that situation. The person you're with, the circumstance you got yourself into, the location that you're living in. Like if you feel bitterness, there's not self present, and that's your clue to yourself that, like, hey, something's wrong, I should pay attention to that. And bitterness can be a taste. By the way, the more you get into human design, you start realizing about, like, things about cognition. I'm taste cognition. And so one of my mentors, Leanne Wolf, talks about how I need to taste people's words. And so I started thinking about the projectors in my life, and I think about certain situations. I'm like, I could taste the bitterness in their tone when they talk to me at that time, and so it made me cognitively aware of what's going on with them. So like, bitterness is not just a taste. I think you can have a bitter smell, right? Like, wouldn't lemon be like a bitter smell? And some people are smell cognition. My wife Wendy is smell cognition. So like, we've been talking about, like, when you're listening or you're, like, in a situation like that, this smells funny. Like, trust that. That is quite literally your body's intuition going, like, like, that's your inside voice going ding 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 ding. So where am I going to go from here? Your splenic authority. So that's because you have a defined spleen. So you're going to be, and I think that's interesting. You've only got the one channel coming out of there. I'm splenic, or I have a defined spleen, but I'm sacral authority. So I'm a gut decision guy. This spleen is awesome. Having a defined spleen for me in particular has meant that I could abuse my body my whole life. Like, basically could kick the shit out of my body and it just keeps coming back for more. I've learned to not do that, because actually, if I take care of myself, I can feel really amazing. But for example, my son has a open spleen, and he just doesn't do good with antibiotics. He doesn't really trust his body with the food he eats. I definitely talk to some people that have open spleen, or no, actually, that's an example. I'm confusing. I'll leave that for now. You're a split definition. So what that means is that your ajna and your throat are connected, creating a definition, but there's no direct path to your spleen and your root. So basically, you're going to not feel like yourself by yourself, I guess is one way to put it, unless the transits, which is a whole different thing, like, where, like, the time of day or the people you're around would complete that for you. So, for example, you and I also can create what's called a composite, which I don't remember how to do in here. Is it new? Oh, connection. They call it connection. So I'm going to choose me. I'm going to choose you. And this is you and I energetically right now. So this is you and I coming together. So I actually, like, bring, like, yeah, we're a complete single definition here. Like, everything's connected, right? There's no white that's completely stopping you from being connected. So I'm actually arguably helping you feel more energetically complete right now, I suppose, is one way to do it. Yeah. So, and then, like, where you and I share this 36, for example. You bring the 60 to my 3, and the 60 is actually in transit right now, so it was already happening without us doing that. But so that's always interesting, I find. Okay, back to, again, I'm sharing what I understand of it. I am not the traditional reader. So,
Richard, I had a question just about that split. You're saying, like, without, say, right now, I'm not, like, connecting those two parts of myself, and that may not feel like my full self. Like, what exactly does that mean? Because if this is, like, how I am, like, if I don't feel like myself, like, is that really me not being me, or is that me, like, having, just experiencing some sort of, like, disconnection?
what I've sensed or learned is that we are all the body graph. We're all of these things. It's just where you have definition built in. It is you, and sometimes you need the other energies are what you're here to learn about, and you can learn about it from another person. You can learn about it from touching a tree that actually has it, because there's a design for plants, there's a design for inanimate objects, there's a design for reptiles, there's a design for all these things, right? So, like, if anyone's listening, like, start recording the date that your plants are being born. Like, literally the second it pops up out of the ground is its birth date. So if you want the energy from the plant, like, grow a cactus and get, if cactus is your thing, maybe not the best example, grow a pot plant and use that plant medicine, but actually, like, connect to it with the energies that you want to get from that plant, right? So you can also get it energetically, like I say, from the planets. So like this is the design of the universe right at this minute, right? So we're in gate like 13 is in the sun and defined out of the G center. Is that yeah. But then you using the just now time, we'll call this Graham on Feb 2nd, 20. Boop. So this is what you're experiencing right now, but you're also, and I've been playing with this with people on Zoom calls and in Discord. Like you and I are energetically connecting through this medium.
Mhm.
So I'm actually still energetically connecting that. You don't, it seems clear to me that you don't need to be in the same aura of the person physically. And that's like Reiki and like all these things. Like everything is energy and frequency, and it doesn't have to be physical. It just needs to be intentional. So this is you with me out of the picture. This is just you with like standing by yourself in your place right now. So your all your throat, like all these channels here are defined for you. I actually have these naturally in mind. You don't normally. You've got half of it, but
Mhm.
your throat right now is particularly that channel is complete. They're like gifts that you have that are activated right now. And
Mhm.
so energetically, I've definitely found it's trippy, but like I can almost, I've actually, we've been talking, a couple people have been talking about like, you could just rent to have me nearby, like have me sitting in the background in a Zoom call. And just because I'm there energetically, I might complete a channel for you and be like, I need to have this. Um, by the way, like right now, with the transit, your Ajna, you've got the 4323 channel.
Mhm.
And I was talking to Chet in Parkin this morning about it, and he said something so cool. Let me see if I can remember it. He said it's people that have that channel. They have knowing without the knowledge. So these are people that if they have this channel, things come out of their mouth, and they seem like it's called the freak to genius. So they like what they say is just freaky, like holy cow! I don't even know where that came from. It's because they're like literally channeling it. So these people will come across as weird because they literally don't know what they're talking about. So they're gonna definitely come across as either making shit up or taking ownership for an idea that really wasn't even theirs. So probably lots of stuff with that, but you have that activated right now. So I'd be willing to bet, and particularly like for me, and by the way, there's a design of plants, and I have all the receptors for plants except one, which is why it seems that cannabis and mushrooms aren't a plant. They're a what are they? A
Fun.
fungus, a fungus or whatever, a fungi. Anyways, cannabis has been really interesting for me because it actually activates stuff for me, and then so I've been learning how to use it as a tool and then refining it like an experiment. So I experiment with CBC, CBG, CBD, depending on the CBN, depending on the time of day. Like I'm weaving it into like the proper stack, people call it, or it's a cocktail. It's basically like how do I get to the point where I just am absolutely vibing by using um, plant medicine. Which I love this phrase, by the way, that I learned. Mother Nature's so smart; she put the medicine in our food, and so like this is something I can grow in my backyard, which I don't because it's too much work, but that I buy, that I then use to play my sheet of music, my body graph. So because the plant gates, it's definitely 57. I'm pretty sure the 10, and I think it's the 20, and I've got all that in my design. So
Question about that. You were saying that you're kind of like have this idea of like creating like a cocktail or like a diet of plants that help you. Like, how do you for yourself like go around like determining the goals that you want of like what those plants can do for you?
the goals. Yeah, you're thinking I'm way strategic. I'm like I'm not like that. I'm an experimenter. So actually, let's go back to me
See
for a
what
second.
happens. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And I've
Cool.
learned that that's right for me. And that so I'm a 3-5. So I'm a
Mhm.
3-5 profile, or and so this has been described as the costume I wear. Which, by the way, from the conversations I've had this week, it sounds like Profile was not necessarily channeled from Raw. It was more he wanted to write a book and needed content, so he was spinning some tales, but with his knowledge. So basically, Profile is not direct channeling; it's um, something. It's his interpretation of the message. So we need to take it with a grain of salt. So I'm now actually testing, like, am I a 3-5? Maybe I'm not. Like, I don't know. That doesn't necessarily feel exactly correct anymore. Or if I go around saying I'm a 3-5, which I always just bump into shit and like bumps into me, if I actually embody that and agree to that, then am I inviting that into life? Whereas I would rather have a more structured life. So yeah, so there's intent around, like, if I listen to something that maybe isn't 100% correct, am I actually creating the problems that a 3-5 would occur? Anyways, working through that. But the 3 is in my personality. That's the dot 3 that makes the 3. So that's the 3 here and the 3 here, and the 5 there is 5 there. It makes me a 3-5. So I'm considered life's experimenter. I'm here to experience everything through. I'm experienced to learn through experience. And yeah, I mean, how I discovered human design was 3 years ago in a shamanic weekend. It was like MDMA and magic mushrooms, and like, it was. I went from never smoking a cigarette in my life to having my head blown off. But the folks there introduced me to human design. But at the time, they were just kind of like dabbling in. They said, "Hey, we're curious about this new thing, and we just want to ask you some questions." And they said, like, if someone said to you, "The pot on the stove is hot, don't touch it," what would be your instinct? And I was like, I'd have to touch it. Like, I would just have to. Like, and that was what caught me. Like, that's all it took. I was like, okay, there's something to that. What a specific weird question. Whereas you're a 4-6, that's probably, you'd be like, no, if you told me it's hot, cool, I don't want to burn my hand. I'd be like, I gotta fucking burn my hand because I don't believe you. Like, and by the way, my 70% of my personality, or my who I am, is this gate of the listener, but with pessimism. So, like, 13.3 is, I think the line is, pessimism. So 70% of who I am is to be this listener with pessimism. And so I think that's what really hooked me. Is it was like, I wouldn't believe you. I'd have to touch it because I need to experience life. That's my profile. That's the costume I wear. That's what I'm here to do. So how that kind of translates in my life is the 3 is, it's a hard life. Like, it's bumped, or it can feel like a hard life. Shit bumping into me and me bumping into shit. But the 5 is, it gets projected onto me by people that I've got all the answers for them. Like, they actually just kind of assume that I do. And I'm starting to realize that that's how it comes across. Like, I look like I got my shit together, and it looks like I'm confident, and and then I could speak clearly. But really, I'm just like this broken child that keeps slamming into walls everywhere. When they talk about the profiles and the lines, like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, there's this analogy of a house theme. So, like, the 1 is the investigator. So if you have a 1 in your profile, you're in the basement. You're like always digging for more information. You're never satisfied. That's how you learn. And so that's your experience. And 2 was like the natural. So, and my wife's a 2. She's a 6 too. So she's just naturally good at stuff. And like anything that she's interested in, she just picks it up. And it's annoying as hell. And so, like, all the 2s in my life, they are the people that are like, why don't you see how talented you are? Like, how come you can't see it? And they're like, oh, it's not me. And it's, oh, shucks. And like, it's just annoying. So that's the 2s. The 3 is walking up the stairs and then falling back down them again. Like, I go up 2 flights and then I fall down 1. And being a manifesting generator and multi-passionate, where I bounce around, having that sort of bumping into things, but also being this interested in many things, I just bounce around like a ping pong ball. And so I did some work for the town of View Royal here in town. And I'll have to get back to Josh. Anyways, I was doing some work for a municipality there. And the lady there, apparently, she never said it to my face, but kept referring to me as ADHD boy. And I had no idea that was my label there. But I never thought I was like that but now I recognize it. I see it. It's in my design. I embrace it, and it's empowering instead of being this thing that someone needs to reflect on me because I could do her job better than her 10 times over. She didn't like that. So back to you. Yeah, so you got that open heart. So when I was talking about like you're not here to prove yourself in this lifetime, in this incarnation. So even that is just like, what if you just leaned into that and accepted that? Because if you ever were like seeking validation, needing to feel valued, like you're already valuable, and we all are. But I mean, it's more the feeling, right? Like if you're like check in with yourself as like a life strategy is, am I trying to prove myself? That's the question you want to ask yourself with that open heart, right? And like I said, you don't want to promise things. You know, if you catch yourself saying "I will," like go "I will," I intend to be there Friday. Just give yourself just a 1% exit strategy, just so that you can continue to vibe for the things that feel right at the time, right? You've got the open head, so you're going to think about things that don't matter, including other people's stuff. Um,
True.
you've got the defined agina, so you're going to be certain about things. I met this fellow from Ireland, and he referred to rock people and water people. And I don't. I was actually talking about human design that night, but I remember that statement, and I think so. You're a rock person, like it kind of sometimes you have to smash through that shell.
Uh-huh.
Um, I'm a water person. I'm like, hey, whatever, could be. I don't know. Like I'm just, and so what I've heard or what I understand and I've experienced is those with a defined ajna will be certain about things even when they're wrong sometimes. And so, you know, until you get it plowed into your head. So here's a question I got for you. So I
All right.
tested a few people with defined ajnas. 1 + 1 equals what?
2.
Okay. What if it could be three as well? Like if you have one thing and you have another thing and you bring them together, you're creating a new thing.
Is the question like what, like how can that happen, or what my response, like is my head blown up? Like
I just wonder. Like some people, I've asked that, and they just are quiet for a little while because they were just like they were so certain that 1 + 1
but
was
it's
two,
two
and I just
there
said
or one
like,
there too. Yeah.
yeah, but it could be three because are you making a new thing, right? And so like there's yin and yang, right? Both sides, like duality, all that, and then there's are you familiar with the world triad? I think it's called the world triad.
No, but that sounds
And
like 3.
yeah, well, it's the visual is three things spinning around like fish, you know.
Mm.
So it's funny. I made a logo for a product based on that, but you know, two people create a child. There's three. You become something more than the two of you, right? Which is interesting because actually, when I think about human design, there's this idea of a like the composite that I made where it was you and me, but then it evolves into groups of 3 to 5 people. So that's called a penta. So you create a penta once there's 3 to 5 people. And there's a whole business certification around using the BG5, which was the business side of human design, which was you know basically I won't go into that, but that's a whole thing too, right? So you got
Yeah.
that defined ajna, you got that throat definition. As I say, the transits right now, you've got lots of throat activation. You got all the channels, those three. Whereas out of the box, yeah, that's the way to put it. Out of the box, you don't come with those channels activated.
Yeah.
But you
Yeah.
know, pick
Paint
the right
contact.
day. Yeah, like in neutrino design, I have alerts set up to notify me when certain things are in effect, and I've been experimenting with that. Like I have an open route, so you know I feel pressure to get things done. Yours is defined,
Mm.
so it'd be interesting to talk to you about root pressure because I could probably learn a lot from you just from that because you've got lots of definition there. But I actually now want to be notified when that's activated because I want to experience what that feels like, but also that could be strategically when I can get some shit done because if I it's not right for me at the time, like why put work into you know? By the way, you know the 6 lines.
Mhm.
Like right now, if we were to look at the just now, so right now we're in 13, and the first dot is those 6 lines. We were talking about the hexagrams, and it comes from the I Ching. And by the way, so I was talking about fractal and how the cool people are meeting. Like one of the people that is going to work with us here at Funky Town is she's actually into the original I Ching stuff where they use like 3 coins and stuff. So she's going to show me like how even that came to be. Because human design is based on like the Rave I Ching or the I Ching, Kabbalah, which is numerology and all sorts of the tree of life stuff, I think, quantum physics, Vedic philosophy, the chakra system, which, as I talked about earlier, is out of date, like 1781 is when the last humans were born with 7 energy centers, right? We've had 9 ever since. But anyways, back to those lines. So right now, today, we're in the dot one, the line 1 energy. And so I've been experimenting with that. There's a woman, Sam Zager. She's a projector. You probably really like her content, actually. She's cool. And she's a manifesting generator quad left. I'm a quad left as well. So she's a shark, but as a projector. And she talks about how she doesn't do 7 days a week. Like it's not Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. It's today's a line 1 day. Today's a line 2 day. So like today's a line 1 day. It's like in discovery, investigative level energy, right? And so I've been practicing like, oh, today's a 2. Today's a day to stay home and just naturally be in flow, and maybe not go out because I'm going to bump, whereas but a line 3 day is the day to bump into people and bump into opportunities and bump into experiences. So I've been actually like living my life lately in a 6-day theme. So much so that I think I was telling you earlier, I make like Spotify playlists to as a soundtrack behind the day's theme. So, line 1 energy, and take a bunch of people's different interpretations of human design for what the line 1 energy is, throw it into ChatGPT, ask it to summarize it into a series of songs, give it to me in 42, my favorite number, 42 different genres. So I get like a really interesting playlist for the day, right? So I've been playing with that just by playing with that line energy. So like sometime tomorrow, I don't know where they've got a slider here, maybe somewhere here. Yeah. Actually, I don't know how to read this app, but basically on Nutrient Design, you could just move the slider forward and be like, oh, tomorrow at 2:33 is when the energy will shift a bit. So, and I don't mind. No, I'm not going to tell you the story I told you about my wife, but that's a good one. Okay, so that's like today's energy. By the way, a child born today, this is part of their imprinting, right? So there's their soul plus I believe this is then becomes the personality side. I'm not clear, but it's basically like this is, if you were to look at a child's birth chart like 10 years from now and they're born today, this is one half of what makes up them, right? That imprint, right? That stamping of the universe. So here's another one for your Ajna, because sometimes it can be hard to, I find it took me a long time to kind of buy into the astrology of it, let's say. Being the pessimist, being someone that just grown up very British Commonwealth, it's always, just backed by old information. What's happening is the sun is sending energy to our planet. And so here's one for your Ajna. When you look at the sun, what you're seeing happened 8 minutes ago. That's how long it takes for that light to be seen by your eyes, right? So the future has already happened 8 minutes ago as far as the neutrinos. Or the sun. So the sun is got these neutrinos, and Ra, the guy that had this download and had all this information, kept saying like neutrinos have mass, and NASA and everyone was telling him that he's crazy and there's no truth. That 10 years later, it was proven that they had mass, right? So like he knew something that the science community disregarded and then eventually later backed up. So I think it's like 30 billion neutrinos pass through the size of like your thumbnail every second. Like it's energy, right? Like while we're physical beings, we're really just trillions of tiny particles all the time, right? Which is why energy can transfer possibly through a screen. And I mean, it does. You cast a spell on someone through a screen. They do it with TV every day. Bill Clinton, when, this is NLP, when he was like reinforcing, all that stuff, or Richard Nixon, I am not a crook. Like he's really like trying to plant that energy into your brain. He's projecting that stuff. By the way, as a projector, you can project into people, right? So here's another interesting I've noticed about projectors. Projectors can generally seem to not be able to maintain a connection energetically with two people at the same time, because you're focused in on that person's G center. So, and I've been watching my projector friends interact, and they almost look exhausted at times if they're in a conversation with three people because they're like focus, 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 like it's right. So does that resonate for you? That's cool.
It's totally the same. I feel like I have this experience when I'm like at like social events where it's like multiple people are like you're I don't know talking to two people at once, and then I'm like I have to like switch between them, and then there's always that decision of like who do you pay attention to in this moment? And sometimes for me, I can tell like the person that I'm not paying attention to like will feel me not paying attention to them. And sometimes will react to that. And so, yeah, I feel that, and I feel like other people also feel that. So it's a good
Yeah,
point.
so watch that, right? That's part of the experiment or your experiment is pay attention to that. And then get
Mhm.
other people's body graphs too. And so when I was talking to Chet this morning, he was talking about aura experiments because we did some of that in Santa Fe at the Human Design conference. And I got to try some more of those. Like put the manifestors all in a corner and let them cluck around like chickens, and put all the projectors. So Richard Beaumont, he's an OG in the human design space. There's a video of him in like the English countryside. There's a whole bunch of people there. There's like 150 people, and a lot of them were being introduced to human design. So they had their body graphs with them, like printed out, and he had them all stand in different sections, and then like have them sample what it was like. And one of the observations I think he made right off the bat was all the projectors. So the manifests and generators were all kind of like buzzing, but all the projectors had sat on the ground. They're all like conserving their energy. So projectors and a lot of projectors I meet seem to tap out around 4 o'clock every day. Like they just literally have gotten all the energy they can handle from all of us generators, and they're just like, "Fuck this!" You know, seems to be almost a trend and something you can observe. But like he had all the projectors together, and they were sitting down. They had like decided to sit on the ground, and nobody said anything. It just happened. So
That's great. I resonate with that also because like this year so far, I've just been trying to not drink coffee just as an experiment for myself. And I've noticed I just need a lot more naps just to get through the day. Like sometimes I'll take like 2 naps in a day, and I definitely feel that kind of like, okay, I'm done. I'm done. Like,
well, and some of that might be part of your strategy with your design, but there's so many things that we're learning collectively. Like I don't know if you follow Andrew Huberman, but he had some
mm,
interesting things I picked up about coffee. Like he's like, we don't need it first thing in the morning. You know, you want to have your
mm.
first cup of coffee around 11 o'clock. That's when you actually need the hit. We're just used to, oh, I need my cup of coffee to start the day. Do you know the origin of the term coffee break?
Starbucks? No, I
No,
don't.
no, it was either I think it was for World War I. So the coffee had already kind of made its way to America, and people were there was some sense of it, but like it's a psychedelic, right? If you follow, who's the guy that did How to Change Your Mind? Such a great
Oh,
book
Michael
and series.
Pollan?
Michael Pollan. He did another book called Your Mind on Plants, and he did an
Mm.
experiment. Where it's like he went 30 days without having any caffeine, and then he had some, and he said it was like taking mushrooms. Like it just hit. Like we just have caffeine in everything, and we're all hyped up all the time. So we're not at our natural self, right? I think it was either in World War I or World War II. The term coffee break came from in the factories. Women were building the machinery for war because the men were overseas fighting the battles. And the women would always tap out around 2 o'clock. They would just like they were all fighting to save their country, but they actually like had no gas left, so they would give them coffee, and all of a sudden they were like rabbits for the next 3 hours and got even more work done. And that so a coffee break, which most people view as a time to rest, I guess, like or just take a break, is actually where you're getting yourself jacked up with more caffeine. So what if you just took the caffeine out for a little while and realized that you don't need it at all, right? So, so there's interesting clues, by the way, in your design. There's something called the primary health system or PHS, and really, human design proposes that everything we know about food and diet is all horseshit. My experience lately is absolutely that. It's more about how you digest your food. So my type is calm touch. So, and I didn't really understand what that was at first, but as I've tested it, calm touch is I need to eat calmly. So I either need to eat by myself, or if I'm with other people, it needs to be a calm situation. And so I started testing that because I used to think I was lactose intolerant, like, oh, I can't handle dairy and stuff. No, it was that if I was having ice cream, that's your comfort food. So you're probably with someone that needed comfort. They're uncomfortable. The dissonance between them and me is nervous. So that ice cream goes down like razor blades and or makes me need to go to the bathroom. But if I can eat a jug of ice cream by myself with no effect. So I've tested that, right? So for calm touch, and calm touch is not just how I digest food. It's also like I realized that my grandmother every year she would get me a wool sweater and they were beautiful and I wanted to wear it so badly because my grandmother gave it to me, right? And but because it's all itchy, I couldn't wear it. Like every time I put it on, I'd be like, I don't like this sweater, but I couldn't tell you why. Now I know it's because it felt awful on my skin. So
Mm.
I've got a strategy these days where I wear long sleeve shirts, because I like the coziness of it, but they're Lululemon shirts that just feel really good on my skin, and then I can put any shirt I want over top. So I've just developed a strategy to feel good, but I didn't have a clue that that was what was going on. Like I literally went through 30 years of guilt for not wearing my grandmother's sweaters. Like every year she'd probably drop $80 on a sweater and I would never wear it. Every time I'd see her, she'd ask me if I liked my sweater, and I would lie because it sucked. It was like wearing sandpaper.
Right.
So you,
About the diet, I'm so curious. Like, is there like a minimum like level of nutrition in the food? Because like I don't know, like to get whatever you need out of it, like could you drink? Could you eat like dirt, rocks? I don't know. Drink water? Could you get what you need from water? Like, there's got to be some other thing.
experimenting with all kinds of stuff. So I'd say I don't know the answer. So I'm not a doctor. I'm not a
Yeah,
lawyer. I'm not a
same.
pharmacist. I'd probably play a good doctor on TV or something, but that's the extent of my doctorism. I'm a citizen scientist, is the way I call it. So I'm eating less and less food all the time, and the more healthy I feel because of my digestion, the less I want the food that I used to have. Like I'm
Mm,
like my family will order from the local pub and like I can smell the burger and my memory remembers how much I love the taste of a burger, and I do like the taste of a burger, but my body had 2 bites in and I'm like, like what are you doing? My body is like rejecting the food lately, which is good because then I just feel better and better. So I am getting to the point where I'm just naturally feeling healthier and healthier every day and eating healthier and healthier because I know what my body wants and I'm listening to it. I'm not letting my mind go, I deserve a burger because I've had a hard day. I deserve a beer because I've had a hard day, right? Um, so yeah, tapped into the feelings and sensations of why I was eating those things. And now that I have a complete understanding of my form, and by following my roadmap, because yours would be different, right? Like people are different types. Some people are meant to be in a nervous situation, and when like they're meant to eat on the go and be jittery and be like, if they eat calm, they can't digest their food. So
mm,
there's also environment too. Again, I don't really know this because they recently updated this up. It looks gorgeous. The old one was fine, but I really liked Neutrino Design. But let's see.
yeah. I think with the diet, it sounds like it's like this idea I've come across before called like intuitive eating, where it's like your body like gives you the signals of what it like actually needs. And maybe it sounds like like you're saying like the calm touch, or for me, I'm pretty sure mine is like high sound. It's like
Okay.
maybe that enables me to get more in tune with the intuitive response my body has to the food as well. And then I can be, because I've had a similar experience with like burgers. Like I've been mostly like plant-based for a while now, and like every once in a while I'll like go back and try it because I'm just curious, and then my body's just like, no, no, I don't really need this right now. But
Mhm.
it's like those signals, I'm like remembering those signals, and maybe the more in tune I am with that, I'm just kind of like led in the right direction.
It made me think of the conversation this morning and what you're saying there. Like, you think about all these people that are going off and having ayahuasca ceremonies and stuff. The medicine is obviously speaking to them and having a profound effect. The other
Mhm.
thing is they're generally removed from their normal environment for a week as well and attached to nature. So they're getting earthed, like earthing and grounding. I don't know if you looked into that, but that's a whole thing. And then they're in nature. they're having water, they're eating vegetables, and a week later, they're like, oh, I've seen God and I understand the universe and da 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 da. And then they come back to their normal lives and they don't integrate everything, right? So like, and I don't know if you've done plant medicine, but like the main thing I was taught right off the bat is, it's setting, and intention. So you got the right setting, and but then you need to like integrate what you've done, but you need to plan for it. If you come back, like if you've seen that you're off the path through one of these experiences, people come back and they just start blowing up shit in their life. Well, that doesn't reinforce that the decision was good because they're getting so much dissonance from everyone around. They're like doing too much. So the idea is you hold the gold after something like that, right? You hold it for 28 days. You basically are just like, I'm going to just, take that information and observe and make little tweaks, little strategies, mini strategies, and then you're working to the larger strategy. So, but yeah, like I think almost every person would benefit from, let's say, it's a vision quest as well. I mean, that's really extreme, where you just basically go into the woods by yourself for 7 days, and like if you can survive, you can survive. But like a light version is go somewhere where go somewhere where you're in the right environment for yourself. Like I'm valleys. My wife is mountains. People with caves as their environment. What's your environment? Do you remember? I don't have the paid, but I could actually bring. I should probably bring
the markets internal.
I'm sorry.
Markets
internal. Okay, I'm actually gonna play. Are you good for time here still, or?
Yeah.
Fun? Okay. I am going to share my screen using Neutrino Design because I know how to navigate that better.
Cool. Yeah, so the integration practice also reminds me of this like human design knowledge in a way, where it's like you can read all you want around like, oh, like I'm supposed to be like this or whatever, but like the real work is like integrating that in your day-to-day life and like how you embody it. Mm-hmm. So I like the parallel there for you bringing that up.
Yeah, well, it's experiment, right? The one thing you'll hear a lot is experiment, take what resonates, which again is kind of frequency and vibration. Mm-hmm. So they say take what resonates, leave the rest. What I can tell you is after 3 years, the stuff that didn't resonate before resonates now, right? Like it's different. So, okay, Graham.
Natural unfolding.
Sorry?
A natural like unfolding. Like I guess you can't really do all of it at once. You got to start somewhere. Yeah. And do something next and then next. So.
Hit me up with the date again.
December 17th, 1990.
So this is Neutrino Design on my, because actually you know what? I'm going to grab my iPad. It's a bigger screen. One sec.
Cool.
Because this is where the stuff gets really interesting. And most people don't get exposed to, like in the old days, a couple of years ago in human design, apps, like it's still evolving, right? The information we're getting is still mutating. People are still interpreting it, which is kind of how the whole thing is supposed to work. But the apps are getting so rich that it can literally just like tell you stuff. As I say, I was reluctant to even do this on a podcast because on Monday I'm getting this other reading that's a whole different kind of reading, and I might change my tune on Monday. But for now,
it's okay to evolve. You can like that system too.
Yeah, we're supposed to, right?
Yeah.
But being the experimenter, at the very least, other people don't have to do it, but I'm going to. That's the 3-5 in me. I'm going for it. Okay, so I'm sorry?
Are you going to like put that on a podcast at all or like talk about it? So everyone can hear? Yeah. About your new reading.
Yeah, I think so. I need to get permission first, so I'll ask, but I'm assuming she wants to share that. So, by the way, I was talking about the pattern. That's really interesting too, right? So it asks for birth date, time, and location, but it seems to be much more astrology and I think numerology based versus human design stuff. But they don't acknowledge it, or at least last time I looked. But it sure seems interesting. And that one's neat because you just basically put in your info, and it tells you what's on your mind that day, and or tells you what's on your partner's mind that day, or what they're like experiencing that day emotionally, and then you can talk about it and talk about why. There's lots of clues in here, like genetic trauma and your fear gates and your melancholy gates and what you dream about is all in the app. And you start talking about your partners or people that you interact with about that stuff, and it's like next level. So I'm gonna plunk you in here. It was December
17, 1990.
Oh, right. Shit. My iPad keyboard can't do sevens anymore.
Uh-oh.
But see, I have to do this. I have to copy and paste the 7 because if I hit the 8 really hard, a 7 appears. Okay. So 7. Oh, I'm trying to do that. 17. And sorry, when?
1990.
And time?
1950. So 7:50 p.m.
I already forgot where you told me. Where's the location?
Oakland, California.
Oh, right. Yeah, Moneyball. Okay. So what I really there's a lot of things I like about neutrino design, partly because it's on the go, and as I say, they just recently updated even your dream rave, so you can actually like see how you sleep. The idea is that you're like when you're sleeping, you're being programmed differently. You're a mammal when you sleep. You basically turn the outer brain off, and so there's some really interesting patterns and things, and you're looking for your weak point when you sleep, and that was very eye opening. But what I wanted to do is show you a couple of things. So one interesting thing you can do is you can look at yourself with the zodiac wheel. So this is you and your design, but as the
we can't see the screen.
The
screen.
Yeah. That's interesting. Why can't you?
I'm looking at the mybodygraph.com.
Okay, I'm busy talking about it and it's not there.
We believe you. Yeah.
Why? Oh! I was sharing the browser window, not the whole screen. Okay, so this one. So let me go back to show you how I got here because you missed that step. So here I am in.
I can't see it.
Really?
Yeah, it's the split screen, so I can see both of our videos. Yeah.
There
we go. Cool.
Okay. I'm also confusing myself because I'm on my iPad and then I got a mouse next to it, but it's for the PC. So I'm kind of creating my own confusion here. All right. So this is you in neutrino design. So the same thing. It's still your body graph. It's still the roads that you travel on the right. The red is the tunnels that you get into to see where you travel, right? So if I click the cog in the top right-hand corner and I choose personality view, it's only going to show the right side, right? So this is one way to look at it. This is you, your conscious state. And then I can flip to the other side and this is your design view. So one of the things that I did is I was like, okay, well, if the roads are the ones I've traveled, I've spent enough time focusing on that. And I just started zeroing in on all this stuff. Like I literally went through each one and was like, how does this feel? And is this me? And then started experimenting with, well, I guess I really am sacral and I'm going to lead with that energy. And that was so informing about what I was working on. Or what I was learning. So that was kind of interesting. And like this thing goes into all sorts of detail. So I don't want to get too confused here. The transit stuff though, this is you in the transit. So again, kind of like you saw in that other app. But what's cool about this app is that you can notify me when, and then like certain gates come in. So like, is that energy here for me now? So there's something before, like you may get it for a plant or from someone else, but what if you got it because Uranus was in gate whatever for a week or whatever? It's all interesting discovery stuff. But let's get to your cognition. So your smell cognition. So that's you take in life through effectively smell. So if you think to yourself, this smells funny, you want to listen to that. Like that is literally your internal dialogue because that's actually natural for you. And so this gives you tells you about this, right? And what I love about this is it gives you some detail, and you can just kind of dig in and see how that feels. I'm taste cognition. So I taste the room. I taste people's words. I taste food. Like I really actually only want to eat food that tastes good to me. Now, you probably everyone would say that, but no, I really it needs to taste good to me, or like I'm a hell no to Brussels sprouts and liver. Like there's not a chance. I don't even care if it was the most important food to eat. It tastes like ass, and I'm not eating it. So um, I wanted to say something about that though. Taste. Oh, I learned about mouth breathing through a friend. So there's a book called Breathe or Breath, which of course I didn't read because I'm a quad left and have the attention span of a squirrel. But I learned from my friend Liam about breath, and he was talking about in this book. They talk about how our teeth are eroding because as humans we didn't originally breathe in through our mouth. And so, even just breathing in through your mouth, it's kind of like water on the rocks, right? Like it's like if we actually kept our mouths closed a lot of the time, get we wouldn't have as much damage to the inside of our mouth. For one example, the other one was Kenyan runners will actually practice running with water in their mouths. This is why one of the reasons why they're great runners is they only breathe through their nose, right? They're calm because they're breathing out through their nose. Which, by the way, people with you got the open head. If you want to, I've learned to help with anxiety or to get into a meditative state quicker. The breath work I find is the secret. I learned this from my tattoo artist of all people. Was when I breathe in through my stomach, then I take 2 sips through my nose and aim to my head, and I basically like almost cross my eyes, like I'm trying to send the air there and out. Then I hold it there for 4 seconds. So a lot of that's common breathing stuff. But the secret he gave me with the anxiety piece is that you breathe out through your nose, right? So a lot of people will breathe out through their mouth to get rid of the stress or get rid of the heaviness. But when you breathe out through your nose, and especially you breathe out as long as you can, like even if it takes 12 or 14 seconds, you're because you're breathing out through your nose, you're actually telling your body that you're safe. And that's because our bodies, our caveman bodies from 50,000 years ago, were being chased by saber-toothed tigers. And when you're being chased, you breathe through your mouth. You're like panting, right? So you can actually calm your anxiety just by breathing out through your nose with intention, like a controlled breathing state, because you're actually telling your brain you're safe. And anxiety is fear of the future, right? So it's just such a basic thing, but it's just all there in our biology, and it's so that open head, anyone with the open head is going to really benefit from that. Hello there. Good. Oh, I have to go soon.
Cool.
Yep. What time are you on today?
Now until
Was it 5 o'clock? It starts.
no, it starts at 6:15. I just have a lot of setup to do.
Okay. I'm just doing a podcast. Is it okay if we just chat here for a bit?
Absolutely.
Okay. I'm Sean, by the way. Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you.
Got a new facilitator in tonight.
Cool.
What was I talking about?
Smell and taste cognition. I had a question about the smell. Like, is it like just the physical sense of smell, or is it also the metaphorical, like, does this smell good? Like, almost like you're taking a litmus test of like a room, like you're getting the vibes of like all the things and then having some, I don't know, like kind of like average of it all, or like kind of test of what it is.
100%. Like that's my understanding. Is it's how you take in life. So it's how you take in information. It's how you take in the vibe. Your cognition is going to come from smell. So with taste, because I don't. My wife has smell, so I can kind of understand from my conversations with her, but I can describe taste really well. And that's where I was going with the breathwork thing.
Yeah.
He was telling me about mouth taping. Like a lot of people will tape their mouth at night so that they sleep better, right? And some folks, they want to build more strength in their lungs. So breathing through the nose, I think it's supposed to help with that too. For me, because I'm a taste cognition, I take in information through my mouth. Like I'm actually tasting the room. So I realized that if I were to mouth tape, I would actually have less stimulation while I'm sleeping when I should be resting. So much as I don't like mouth taping, and I almost always forget to do it, any night that I mouth tape, I wake up the next morning more rested because I'm not taking in the taste of the room all night. Does that make sense? Like I could smell a bit of smoke. I could smell the cat come by, and it's going to disrupt my sleep because I'm taking it through my mouth. Whereas your smell. So here, I wonder if you, yeah, maybe you should be like a nose. Try it for a night. Put nose like plugs, like a swimmer, and just see if you sleep better. Because that's how these experiments work, by the way, man. Is you just try it for a night and maybe try it for a week. Put together a table, try it without, try it with, and prove to yourself. Because that's when you then validate the experiment for yourself too, right? And I'd love to hear the results of that experiment. So
sure, yeah, one of those like swimmer things that just kind of plugs it up.
And just see if like all of a sudden you wake up and you're like, I've had the best sleep of my life. Which, by the way, like you were asking about food and stuff, I am experimenting with everything. So I am at the point now where I actually think sleeping hours and out is not benefiting me at all. I'm really interested in like I do yoga nidra, and like a 15-minute yoga nidra is like a 4-hour nap. So why wouldn't I just do yoga nidra 3 times a day and get way more done and experience more life, which is way more fun than being lying and on my back and wake up the next morning sore and stiff because my body is an active body and wants to be busy. Yeah, see, just answer for myself. I guess I'll be up late tonight.
More hours to do things. Yeah, to try
or learn things, right? So that's interesting too. Yeah. So when I was talking about being a shark, that's what these arrows. So the 2 arrows on the left, the red, and then the black ones, the big ones, because I can't really point to the screen. Oh yeah, I can use the mouse. So I'm talking about these guys. So that's where that information is coming from: your cognition, your environment, all that kind of stuff. And so the idea, as I understand it, is people do this experiment. They usually start with strategy and authority, although it sounds like strategy might be out the window. The more I talk with Chet, and he's going to do a reading for me as well. So I really want to hear his take on this, because I might be throwing strategy out the window, which sounds strange because I've always been strategic. And then an authority, but then usually the idea is that as you decondition over 7 years, so the idea is that we go through 7-year cycles. I mean, human design and all this stuff proposes a bunch of things like, you're basically imprinted as a human by the time you're 7, right? That takes 7 years to be conditioned, and then you layer on the onion. And so deconditioning in human design is peeling that shit off. So usually when people do it, is they start getting familiar with the design, they start resonating with parts of it, and then you kind of work around backwards. You start with, I think I'm probably getting this wrong, but I think that is the cognition. So you sort of start with investigating the smell, but then you'd move on to environment and put yourself in the right environment so that you vibe. So actually, let's talk about environment. I don't know a lot about internal markets, so I'll give you other examples, and then let's read yours, and you can tell me how it's experienced. Okay. Cool. So I'm valleys. And so to me, that might mean like Kelowna, or a place where there's a valley and then mountains around it. Like I'm meant to be in a hubbub of information. So there's the physical idea of it in my mind that sounds great, but there's also the analog, which is just like a valley. So a family room in a house is like where it's a sunken family room. Even as I picture in my mind, I'm like, that's where I'd like to live. Like the old houses in the 70s where they had like the sunken family room, like the Brady Bunch or something. That would be my ideal environment, be sitting on the couch there and have people coming from different directions talking to me about stuff. So that's a valley. So I've met some people that have caves, and I've actually experimented with them. I'll meet them at a restaurant, and I'll arrive late so that they have to pick the table. And then I'll go and say, why did you pick this table? And they'd be like, oh, it's close to the bar. And I'd be like, is it because you can see all the exits and your back isn't to any of them? And they'll be like, oh yeah, actually. But they didn't know it until I said it, right? And it's because their body remembers from a previous life, or their body remembers from someone else's previous life that's been carried through their DNA sequencing through all these years. It's in their junk DNA or DNA, I guess. And they were once, I guess, blindsided by a saber-toothed tiger that came from behind instead of through the front entrance of the cave, right? So then I tested that further. I've been asking people with caves environments about, like, do they feel safe in a car? And I got the question wrong the first time because the person I asked had been in a car accident. So they did, of course, didn't feel safe in a car. However, I said, okay, putting that aside, the fact that you don't like being in cars because you're in a car accident, if you were parked in a parking lot inside a parked car and there was no like cars coming at you, how would that feel? Would you feel really safe there? And they were like, yes, very much so. And it's because you can lock all the doors and the windows from the inside. You have control over all the exits. So someone has that caves environment in their body. It's part of what they're afraid of or what they're here. They remember it, but they don't remember why. They don't know why they remember it. So my wife's is mountains. And mountain people need to be higher elevation. She prefers to sit in the second level of her house looking out the window. She's also a 6, which they're up on the roof in that whole house analogy. So they also are looking down and kind of disassociated. So, you're a 6, you're a 4-6. So your 4 is you're just naturally connected. People just kind of find you. And so I don't know if that resonates for you, but a lot of 4s I talk to, I'm just like, yeah, you don't seem to have to work for your connections. And the other people probably find that really annoying, but they just kind of find you. So I don't know if that resonates for you. But the 6 in you is that you go through three themes in your life. Up till 30, you live a life of a 3, just like I did. Shit was just bumping into you. Shit just happened to you. You had an experiential lifetime. Then around 30, you go up on the roof. You kind of disassociate from everybody until you're about 50 or 51 as you go through your Chiron. And that's so you basically kind of like tap out, you pull back from life. You're just observing. You're like, I'm just going to wait for you guys to figure this shit out. I might come back down. And it turns out that apparently a lot of people with 6s in their profiles are dead by the time they're in their mid 60s because they got comfortable being disassociated and didn't come back down. And I'm starting to think, because Wendy's mom is a 6-2, and she's got dementia, and had went through all these traumatic things, and was lived in the 70s and 80s and was an enabler, right? She was trying to keep a happy home, but didn't get involved because there was challenges in life. And she's got dementia now. She kind of tapped out and stayed tapped out. So I'm starting to think that there's a connection between the 6 profile and dementia, and it'd be interesting to see if that resonates for people. Plus, I without a doubt, I think it's tied to gum disease in our mouth. There definitely seems to be more and more things that and she had her teeth out when she was 20 and just had a history of jaw problems her whole life. So the connections with these things, I think, are in these designs as we start to ask questions about the parallels and the things that we're looking at. So that 6, your first 30 years of life is trial and error, things banging into you. Why does this keep happening to me? I'm guessing at this point in your life, it's less of that. And so I don't know if there's a feeling because how old are you now?
33. You just turned 33.
33. Yeah. So it'd be in the last 2 years where you might be yeah, I've kind of pulled back. You're kind of sitting on the roof with your hands behind your head going, what are you idiots doing down there? I don't approve. And then you come up. And you'll come off the roof with this knowledge, for example, as you lean into an experiment, then you'll be come down and share those gifts with people too, that knowledge, right? From observing. So the third part of your life, from 50 on, you're down among the commoners again. and so it's interesting. I wonder if, see, this is why what she was saying was that profile wasn't really channeled. It was Ra's interpretation, or he was trying to, he wanted to write a book. He needed money. And so he came up with profiles based on his observations of the knowledge and what he saw. And so in a way, he's kind of told us these are our costumes, but in a way it was so he could write a book, not necessarily because it was actually here for us. So I think it's important to maybe not get too into profile anymore. And I'm saying that today, having that kind of realization right now, is that I'm going to start being more pessimistic of profile going forward and being am I actually taking that label, and maybe that's an opportunity to shed it. I'm not, my experiences are things that I'm having a choice in. So that's interesting. By the way, there's this whole thing in human design where it's no choice, says the voice. And there's all sorts of camps on what that means. I think there is a choice. I have a choice with how I show up and how I interpret this knowledge. So again, it comes from that sort of caustic manifester, angry, broke. We were talking earlier, like when he wrote the I Ching, from what I understand, he was doing it sitting outside in the cold, using like charcoal on a piece of paper. Like he was miserable as he wrote it. He was very unhappy. And so the I Ching, that is our sort of source of knowledge for inspiration from design, is coming from someone sitting there freezing and angry, with this information that he didn't want in the first place. Like it just hit him, and he was burdened with it, and struggled with it. So, yeah, interesting. Profile will be interesting to see where that goes. But so back to you. Internal markets, self. So I will read to you, and so there's your ideal environment. And again, it doesn't mean you get up and move necessarily, because it's also like where you work. Like I think my dad is kitchens, and wet kitchens, I think. And so like he's in a place where they need to be cooking up something, right? But that could be a factory floor where like it's a lab and you're cooking up some new invention, right? It's not just like you're a chef, right? That's not what kitchens means. So your internal markets self. So that's interesting. Your not self is valleys. So you and I are the opposite, environment wise. By the way, there's one called shores, and that's interesting. I've talked to some people where they're shores, and I got this clue from someone, but the suggestion was just stand in doorways. You'll actually feel more calm, because a doorway is a shore between, say, a kitchen and a living room. Just like when you're standing on the shore, it's the difference between the water and the sand. And that's just a natural place for that person to be. So if someone's shores and you're feeling stressed, I was just like, yeah, just go lean in the doorway. And a couple of them have been like, yeah, I feel strangely calm. Like I can think clearer. I'm like, oh, cool. We got to try. So
transition point.
Yeah. So wouldn't it be funny if people have meetings in the future where it's like, okay, so Barney, you're going to stand in the doorway, and Sean, we created this little alcove that's down 2 feet, but all of a sudden, like we're all vibing, and it's the right people and every environment is taken care of. Actually, you could do that. I mean, we're heading into a VR world. What if you actually just like, and you're having a meeting, and I'm like, Sean's in his valley, and meanwhile I'm just inside my Oculus headset in a valley environment, but now I'm calm and serene and like more engaging in the meeting, because I'm not sitting in a cold boardroom, in the corner or something, thinking I'd rather be in a cave. Okay, so internal markets. This is the next stage in the development of human habitats, where people came out of the caves to trade with each other, to do business. This is a business environment where information and goods are exchanged. In modern conditions, this is a pure urban environment. These are offices where deals are made. Markets means a large crowd of people who interact with each other and exchange information. They don't have to buy or sell anything. It's very important for you to be in the stream of events, big cities, large companies, shopping malls, centers, shops, and so on. Because your environment is internal markets, you are more strict to what information, products, and people you interact with. You prefer and enjoy working with locals or be in a uniform setting. You also prefer to be more active in the exchange of products or information, being the one who offers in a marketplace. Does that check out for you?
Yeah, definitely. It feels like when I'm in places with lots of things going on, I can almost like sense opportunity, or like I'm feeling like I'm more like in the fray, and I can think about, okay, well, how do I want to interact, or what do I want to offer? And that resonates a lot. It kind of resonates when you're saying about my 4. I know this is not
say that 4, right? Like if you just planted yourself, like physically just made sure you're in more market-like places, or the analog of it, your outer authority would then vibe more magnetically, and you'd have more connections come to you, and then you can pick and choose which ones you want to engage in. But because you're a projector, you need to wait for the invitation. So you want to put yourself in that market environment, just vibe, just be you, with no agenda, and wait for someone to recognize you. And if the invitation feels authentic to you, if it feels like that's potential of success, you take that opportunity. Because the thing is, when you start vibing, you start getting opportunities from everybody. And so some of the opportunities will be good, But if you just held it a little longer for one that felt right, it could be better. And so, as someone that's incorrectly initiated his whole life, like I'm supposed to respond to things, but I was so manic in my head because of my open root and open head and open heart. I was just like trying to please everyone but myself. I've had to actually like slow right down and just like wait for the universe to present me with opportunities. And now it is. That's awesome. So your transference, you will think that you should be in a valleys environment is what transference means. So if you're in your not self, so your transference is valleys, which means you might feel like a secluded, calm place. For example, a village or farm in the countryside is best for you. However, you will eventually feel the urge to connect and interact, having a fear of missing out on all that's going on in the big city.
Yeah. With your description of valleys before also was saying that it was like a nexus of a lot of things happening in a way. So they seem kind of similar, but here in the description of not self, it's describing it almost as like a rural valley. So I'm curious if you have an idea of yourself, how you would differentiate, say, from say like the market's description. Like, is it lack of transaction or something?
That's interesting because my not self would be yours, right? Because they're dissonant to each other. And where it says it's very important you to be in big cities or large companies. I always thought I wanted to work for Microsoft. Being a techie, I just thought I'd want to be there. The invitation never came, but I also now know, based on my design, because of some of my channels, I'm designed to be a leader of small groups. Is kind of one of the interpretations. So I would have just been a small fish in a big pond at Microsoft, and I would have been ineffective to myself and others, and I would have probably not lasted there. So much as I always thought that's where I wanted to be, the more I understand my design and I think about those things, and my design, by the way, I can never remember the channel or gate, but it's there's this Groucho Marx line, which is I would never want to be a member of a club that would have me as a member. That is me by definition. I'm this little anarchistic, pessimistic, I want to do well for all, but because of my 3-5 profile and bumping into things and my various circuitry, I eventually just get kicked out of everything. So, and it was so, I took it personally for 50 years. And now that I understand that it's actually the meat suit that I'm in is my aura is doing that. It's not me, right? It's not my, if that makes sense. Like I can't control how people see me. They see me the way they're going to see me. So, and that's a whole interesting thing. Like we were talking earlier about gene keys. There's this thing called Sphinx code, and Sphinx code is basically, I think the guy's name is Magnus, and it was him and someone else. He was on a podcast talking about it, and he had a sort of a download with this other person where they, their knowledge of, I think, human design gene keys led to them creating this Sphinx code, and it's basically like a tarot deck, but it shows your sort of archetypes and your traumas and stuff, and the whole idea, I think, or the way I sort of see it is how other people see you. It shows you, like it's really, really in depth. I actually looked at it 2 years ago, and it was just too much information. And but I actually paid for it the other day. I think it was like $50. And I started reading. I was like, oh boy! Like if I read it 2 years ago, I would have been further along because it was just too much truth. But it was like, woo! It's like because it really shows shadow stuff that like, and that's kind of what people use tarot and oracle for. Is some people think it's fortune telling and whatever, but really it's just making you look at your unconscious, and it's you're just like, why does this image resonate for me? Why did my brain go there? It's really your unconscious, I think, trying to give you clues, and it comes from how you interpret the visuals that you're looking at. And then there's this whole tarot, oracle, arcana, or it's tarot, I guess it's the major arcana. It's really interesting. You start stepping back in time and how that all works. They're all pointing to each other. There's intersections of all that stuff.
Mm-hmm.
How you doing energy wise? I'm actually doing well. I end up not showing up to my meeting with Josh, so I'm gonna have to apologize to him later, but he knows I love this stuff, and it's also Friday night and he's in California, so hopefully he went to the pub or something.
I'm doing well. Yeah. Is there other things in neutrino that you want to hit on? So it looks like so there are 4 variables. We talked about environment,
Yep.
whatever taste and smell
So
were.
cognition, determination, environment. Yeah.
What are the other one? Motivation?
Yeah. So my motivation is desire. My wife's motivation is guilt.
Hmm.
Um, let's read need. So motivation, self, need. Need as a personal motivation refers to a drive for self preservation and security, often causing individuals to take actions they believe are necessary for survival. This motivation can sometimes lead to a narrow focus on fulfilling perceived necessities, even if it means overlooking details or potential consequences. People with need as their motivation might prioritize meeting their basic needs, such as financial stability, physical safety, and emotional security, over other aspects of life. This can result in a tendency to be highly practical, resourceful, and adaptable in their approach to problem solving. However, this strong focus on survival can also cause individuals to be overly cautious, inflexible, or unwilling to consider alternatives that may involve risk or uncertainty. Oh, that's interesting because you got that defined ajna. So that's like it's funny, but like when you start cluing into the design, like that's where the nuggets are being drawn from. Becoming consumed by these. Oh no, I jumped a line. It is important for those with need as their motivation to develop a balance between their drive for security and their ability to adapt to change or explore new opportunities.
Hmm. Yeah, it seems like with the transference of fear, which I'm assuming is around like fear that you won't get your needs met, it's like it almost feels like need is like the active one, and the fear is like a responsive to that. Like, oh, I'm not going to get this, so I'm going to do it, as opposed to like, I need this and I'm going to do it.
Well, and
Because
with
you,
transference, that's that not self, right? So if your motivation seems to be coming from a place of fear, you're in not self. So you want to analyze that environment or that situation and be like, okay, what isn't right? And often I find going back to your human design and being like, okay, where is that coming from? In this case, I guess if it's ajna based, is it coming from the uncertainty of it all? And can you just accept that you can't control everything? Stuff like that. So
mm,
the other thing too is you start getting into your melancholy gates, which is fairly new in here, your fears, and then your genetic trauma. So your fears come from these various gates. So guess what? You're afraid of intimacy.
oh no, oh.
So
Don't get
and so
close to me.
what's that?
Don't get close to me. No.
Yeah. But so let's just see if this resonates. You are afraid to admit to yourself who you really are, afraid to open up and show the real you, fear of intimacy and emotional closeness to others. If you overcome these fears, you have the potential to create close emotional relationships. You determine the drive in a relationship.
Mm,
So you can see how that feels and be like, okay, that's in me because something happened in a previous life to someone else in the family. Like, there's capital T trauma, there's lowercase t trauma, and then there's just genetic trauma that was passed along. I mean, when you think about a lot of heretic diseases, a lot of them skip a generation too. Like my dad has it's a blood thing. My mom will kill me for not remembering the name. But anyways, he's got this. Sorry.
leukemia?
No, no, no. It's like his blood gets hard. He has to actually give blood regularly to
Oh.
soften his. I can't remember the name. Hemochromatosis, I think. So, but I don't have it, and his parents, I don't think, had it. But I think that's one that skips a generation. So you start thinking like your trauma can skip a generation. I would think, right? If it's in your DNA, if it's just been passed through your cells, and so you'd be like, why do I have a fear of intimacy? Well, what if it's okay to have that fear because it's coming from your cells, not from your experiences? So the one thing I heard once that I loved is we're only born with two fears. Like you're born with the fear of falling and the fear of loud noises because that's the first thing you experience. You drop out of your mom's stuff. I was an emergency C-section, so I think I have a fear of bright lights and 8 doctors standing over me and not bonding with my mother in the 70s. And quite literally, my first 7 mushroom experiences were quite literally being on an alien spaceship. And I was talking to someone the other day that was saying that, I don't know if she read it, but it sure resonated for me, is like your first, or I think it's like every macro plant mushroom experience, part of it will be you re-experiencing your birth. Like it just kind of happens as part of it. And so if you had a good birth and it was smooth, it won't be so bad. Mine was like alien spaceship lights, people probing me like an alien abduction, when in fact it was just, that's what was planted to my brain as a first memory. So I don't think I necessarily have a fear of falling, because I didn't fall. I was taken out a different way, right? I didn't go through the birth canal kind of thing, right? So I don't know anything about birth, so maybe I got that wrong. But all I know is my mother would call me every year. I always knew what my birth time was because my mom would call me at 12:18 in the morning and say, I remember going through 18 hours of labor. So
just so you remember on your
just so you remember. Yeah, so gate 11, darkness. You are afraid that you will run out of new ideas when it comes to some area in your life or in general. Fear of ignorance and not knowing. And then what's interesting is like that's gate 11, right? So gate 11 is, I should know this, but see,
it's my son coming out of my ajna.
Coming out of your ajna. So it's an ajna based fear, right? And so it's certainty and uncertainty. And like not every center I think has fears. I think my friend Nathan could explain this thing like down to a T, but which is why I shouldn't be the one doing this. But that comes from there. So like I have gate, I have 57, which is my right ear, comes out of the spleen, and so that fear. Oops.
When you say right ear, what do you mean?
I'm glad you asked because I love this story. So, and I'm going to explain my whole process because this story needs to be told. So, see gate 57 there, like in the spleen.
Yes.
Okay, so I have it both personality and conscious. So that's the red and the black, right?
Yeah. So
the gate 57, my understanding is hearing in the now, and it's the right ear. So it's a very intuitive, instinctual, animal instinct, a survival instinct. I'm a drummer. I've been playing drums for 40 years. My mother used to work for Syntex. I don't know if they exist anymore, but she was a health and safety consultant in a large factory. So she would test people's hearing and stuff. Mm-hmm. And even when I was like 14, she brought hearing tests home, and she said that like I played the drums and had the music playing so loud that it was the equivalent of standing inside a 747 engine. Like I would hit hard, I had it in my ears and speakers. Mm-hmm. So I just naturally assumed when I was in my 40s that I had hearing problems. Like, oh, of course I hurt my ears, right? But what I realized and was starting to realize as I entered my late 40s is that I could hear really well sometimes and not others. And part of it was just being overwhelmed by people. Like I found myself it was too much information. And maybe it was that taste cognition. Maybe it was all my traumas, always looking for, taking care of everyone else but myself. But I was like reading people's lips. And I was like getting to the point where I was like, oh man, I can't hear. But I would go and get tested, and I passed the hearing test. It was making me crazy. So then I went and had my shamanic weekend, did all the plant medicine stuff. And I was introduced to a book at the time called Metaphysical Anatomy. It's by Yvette Rose. Your body is talking. Are you listening? Everyone would benefit from this book. So I have this book. I'm at home having probably my 5th or 6th macro plant like mushroom experience. So I think I had like 4 grams, and going through that whole like it turns out going through my birth again and alien spaceship, like they're going through that moment and then getting to the fun part or the exploration part. But one night I'm lying in bed going through this personal experience, and I could hear my wife and son talking downstairs through 3 doors in our garage, which has one of those thick garage doors. And I could hear them as though they were standing 10 feet away from me. And I'm like, okay, why can I not hear someone 8 feet from me when I'm looking them in the eye? and I can hear them all the way down there. Well, I was super paranoid because I was on mushrooms, and so I was just heightened, and so that hearing in the now became so hyper attuned. I was like, holy cow, my hearing is like superhuman. Like that's really weird. So I pull out my metaphysical book, and this book is not your typical medical book. It's not um, like you look under right ear, and it says people. It was something like people with the right ear. If they have hearing problems, it's because they're always listening for danger and have tuned everything else out, right? Like even metaphysically. I read that and I was like, oh, well, when have I done that in life? And you kind of go through that whole thing on mushrooms. And then the next day I was like, wow, my hearing's a lot better. Like I was just like, could hear better. It was like I processed that trauma. I got rid of that layer of dis-ease in my body, that metaphysical onion layer. And then I was curious about that. And I went online and I found a woman in town that does ear candling. So like where they stick a candle in your ear and clean it. So I went to see her, and I remember reading on her website, it said a lot of people talk about having psychic abilities after seeing her. And I thought, oh, that's interesting. And I thought nothing of it at the time, really. But then I go and get my ear candled, and already I could hear a bit better. So obviously my ear had stored, to protect my ear canal, maybe it manifested as trauma and stuff. And then a couple of days later, my hearing was like really sharp. Like I was like, holy cow, I can hear the inflection in someone's voice. So when I'm talking to them, all of a sudden my right ear was like, ooh, why did his voice warble when he said that word? And I would ask a question. The person would be like surprised, like, what do you mean? And then I'd ask, and it turns out they wanted to say something, but their voice fluttered. Like it was uncomfortable to get through that sentence. And so I've learned now to it's so hyper attuned that I don't take phone calls with my left hand. Like if I'm having a phone call, especially if it's around business where I need the truth, like I need people to actually tell me what the risks are and stuff, because people withhold information because they think I don't want to hear it as a business owner, right? But I actually need the information to make strategic decisions. So I realized that when I took calls with my left ear only, I was hearing the words, but I wasn't hearing the warning signs. So now I take phone calls with AirPods in, or I do it on speakerphone, or I do a Zoom call where I get the right ear and I'm always tuned in going like, "Rrr." And so what I always ask people that have gate 57, and I don't think you did.
No.
I ask them if the right ear rings. And I say and because 57 is one of the plant gates, I think I'm almost sure of that. I'm like, or does it ring when you're on plant medicine? And then you have to dig deeper because they don't remember because they weren't thinking about it at the time. But when you're on cannabis and you got 57, your right ear is going to ring because you're already paranoid. You're on THC, and that right ear is now like hyper attuned to danger, right? So it's become a superpower for me to read the room auditory. Like it's funny. I just had a conversation yesterday about because I have plant medicine every day. Like I've had mushrooms and cannabis every day for 2.5 years now. And I get told by people like I'm not respecting the medicine and all this stuff. And that's just spiritual arrogance at this point. I'm tested for myself what works. And these vitamins are working for me because my design is informed me that it's amplifying my abilities. So until I've got the abilities dialed in, maybe then I'll be like, oh, maybe I'll go a week without it. And that might be something I'll try. But honestly, for me, it's like taking go-go juice or, like taking protein powder. Like I have the medicine to turn the ear on. So I'm intuitive in the now to make better decisions, to show up better and help other people. So that's just the right ear.
Yeah. Are you aware of any are all gates associated with a sense or a part of the left nostril, the right eye, your tongue? I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, there's all sorts of things that are still coming out. So my experience is the 57 is right ear, the 22 coming out of the solar plexus is the left ear. The 17 of the ajna is the right eye. It's and if you start reading the gates and stuff, it's like what the right eye sees versus the left eye, or how it sees it. I was telling you, my design is gate 13, right? Like I've got that 13. If you talk to anyone that's got the 13, all you have to do is say, do you ever have people come up to you and just telling you things and then saying, I don't know why I'm telling you this. Like they literally just tell me secrets, and every one of them's like, "Yeah, doesn't that happen to everyone?" I was like, "No, just you." You're so I'll be standing at the cash line at a grocery store, and one woman just started telling me about her daughter was sick, and then she's like, "I don't know why I'm telling you this." Like I'm like, I don't know, I'm just standing here waiting in line to pay for my groceries, right? But it just comes out of them energetically. They want to sort of volunteer it. And that's been a really challenging lesson for me because a lot of people spill their secrets to me, and they don't know they're doing it. And sometimes they spill something they don't want to spill. And so they now know I know this about them and they ghost me. I've had so many people in my life now that I realize, like on reflection, they told me stuff. I thought there was something I did something wrong or there was something wrong with me, but they told me something they didn't want to share. They know I know, and they don't want to face the mirror, like the person that knows, right? It's like looking in the mirror. So that's been a tough lesson to learn. And what's interesting is like right now, 13 is in transit, right? That's what the top guy on the right. So 70% of what's coming at us on the planet right now for the next 6 days is this 13 energy. So basically, I would kind of imply that right now you might have people sharing secrets with you just because it's energetically in the air. Like technically, you've got that functionality right now, which probably is why I'm rambling and sharing a bunch of stuff because
Yeah.
I mean I'm pretty transparent anyways. But like if it wasn't in transit, I probably would have been quieter about it today. I would have still shared. But instead, I'm like volunteering. You're not even asking. I'm just like, here, let me tell you another anecdote of something personal about me and some trauma, right? So yeah, that's probably why it's coming out of me more freely and without even worrying about it. Is I'm cool with it, and that 13 is being pulled out of it more so from the transit than from you, but energetically, I like your company anyway, so it's a match, right? Like energetically. So basically,
Yeah.
everyone's going through this 13 for the next 6 days. So it'd be very interesting to see how many stories get told over the next 6 days, or how many things that we hear about, maybe even the news. Like all of a sudden, someone's on. Like actually, go watch Jimmy Fallon or Jimmy Kimmel tonight. When people are sitting on the couch, I'd be willing to bet all of a sudden, like there'd be some stories where it'd be like, "Whew, wasn't expecting that one tonight." Like, and then what would be interesting too is maybe, oh, see, I love experiments, but like go back to every time the 13 is in transit on talk shows and just see. I don't even know how you test for like, was more personal things shared during that week than others. I'd be willing to bet it was because the math keeps checking out. So
Yeah. As you were saying, like for you, like having the 13, like people are like talking about like their secrets to you and how that is something to, I don't know, learn how to work with. Like, what have you learned how have you learned to work with that? Like, do you tell people like to not tell you things they'll regret telling you? Do you like put earmuffs on? I don't know.
well, I've only been aware of it technically for a little over a year. Like
Yeah.
because I'm sure someone told me that 2 years ago, but it didn't resonate. You know, I heard what they said, and I was like, I don't know, it doesn't check out. But like, the more I got into it, it was like, oh, there it is. And like, I've had some really wacky experiences. Like, I met a guy on top of a bridge one day, and he introduced himself as Colonel Hazelnut, and then wouldn't disclose his name. But the more I kept talking to him, because I think he was going to jump off the bridge, like it was like a weird situation, a really weird interaction. And but I just was calm and I was listening because I've got this gate 13-3 pessimistic listener. I was just kind of like I was naturally in the zone.
Mm.
You know what's interesting is that day I remember I went out for a walkabout, so I had some extra mushrooms that day, and I was walking, and I remember my right ear started ringing, and I was like, I'm gonna follow this. So I took a different path home, and then ended up on this bridge over the highway. So like here in Victoria, there's this big highway with 3 lanes on each side, a big walking bridge over top, and I'm just like right in the almost in the middle of it, like crossing over with my dogs, and this guy's coming towards me, and he's beaten up, like he's just beaten up by life, and but he stops me and wants to talk and introduce himself as Colonel Hazelnut, which was already like unusual, and then he just started like it started coming out of them, and it was just the weirdest dialogue, man. But he kept leaning back and kind of like it was a weird situation, and then he like almost seemed to feel recognized, and he calmed down, and then he walked home. So it was weird. Like there was some sort of weird interaction that happened there, and it was this energetic sharing. So yeah, it was interesting. And I might as well just get super weird. So
Yeah.
my incarnation cross is what's called the right angle cross of the Sphinx. So how that works for me is your incarnation cross is the cross, the cross of this number, this number, this number, and this number. So they form like a cross. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
So my incarnation cross would be 13, 7, 1, and 2. And so if you go down and look, my that's where under neutrino design they call it purpose. So it's personal destiny of the Sphinx. So and my friend, I'm sure it was Nathan that told me this. Basically, as a Sphinx, if you imagine that big cat in front of the pyramids, it's looks like a fork. So it's this gate here, this gate here, this gate here, and this gate here. It's like this is its tail, these are its legs, and this is its head. And so the G center, which is what this is all about identity and direction. So I'm here as a Sphinx, from what I understand. Like when people meet me, their lives change for good or for bad, and mine too. So it's really interesting when you start digging. It's because there's godheads and there's all sorts of crazy stuff in here that you can dig in. Like it goes on and on and on and spirals in different directions. But I'm a Sphinx. So I think that guy met me, and like I'm not going to say I was the reason he didn't jump off the bridge, but there was a weird energy, and he was basically borderline homeless. And then all of a sudden, by the end of it, he disclosed his name. Like it started with Colonel Hazelnut, then it was John, but I knew that wasn't right. I was like, "That's not your real name, right?" And he's like, "No." And then we talked for 10 minutes, and then he said, "My name's," and I can't remember, and nor don't want to disclose it, but he just settled, and then he walked off. So I felt like, oh, I'll never know, but that felt like a Sphinx moment, right? Like, so that was neat. So that's we all have like a destiny or a purpose, and if you vibe to your purpose, the universe opens up for you opportunity wise. And so, and every one of us has one. And what's the guy's name? Where's these glasses? He's always got like what's it called? Not Metatron's cube. Anyway, he's got Orion. Orion, if you're out there, if you ever see this, sorry, man. Anyways, he said something really cool. You don't want to try to be your purpose, because then you're trying too hard. You're forcing, you're initiating. He said something to the effect of once you're vibing, you'll become your cross, your incarnation cross. You'll become your purpose. That's when you know you've got it. And so it's interesting. That changed my mindset, because I was like, oh, I got to be the Sphinx. Well, that's wrong. Just be like sphinxing everywhere. Like, haha, your life is changing. Driving into you or something. Doesn't work like that. You vibe your best when you become your incarnation cross by taking in all the other knowledge and testing it against, I guess. It's probably the best way to put that.
Kind of reminds me of this like idea in like the realm of manifestation, where it's like in manifesting, it's very much, it's not around like, oh, like I want this car, because you may not necessarily really want that car when you think about it. It's about like the more aligned you are with like understanding what is actually good for you, the more that other thing actually gets closer to you. And so it kind of reminds me of that, where it's like the more that you're like kind of in tune with yourself, you're just kind of like naturally doing what the cross says, you would be doing if you were doing, gate 1, 7, 2, and 13. Like, so it's a really cool story with the bridge, and that you like kind of like leaned into like following your ear.
And put myself in danger. Like my ear was ringing, and I knew that was listening in the now for danger. But I went into the discomfort, and then when I was there, I was like, oh wow, this is like, should I be here? Because and the whole time though, I was super calm. I remember like thinking like old me would have been like, get away from this guy. Who knows? But and he actually at one point he kind of went like boo, like did that to me, right? And I'm there with my dogs on this bridge. And I didn't react. I was just like, "Hey, what's going on, man?" Which is not how most people would react, right? Like
Totally.
I was just totally calm and just was in my element somehow. I just was vibing, and I think that relaxed him. And then, because I remember him saying like, um, "Oh," he said like, "I'm high. I've got cannabis on me. The cops are coming." And I'm like, "Dude, it's been legal here for 2 years." And he was like, "What?" Like even that was information for him. Like he was really gone, right? And so
That's
even,
what saved him.
what's that?
That's what saved him. Legal weed. Yeah.
Well, like maybe like that because of that paranoia. Like I eliminated that paranoia by giving them a fact. Like, hey, you're in Canada, man. It's not a big deal anymore. In fact, like it's, the government shouldn't be involved in this at all. It's growing in my backyard. Fuck off, and stop pushing all your other shit on me and laminating your pieces of paper and lawyering up all the time. Like, fuck right off. Sorry, that's my inner anarchist coming out.
Coming
And
out.
also,
Yeah.
also planning like dying. Like, it's done. We're seeing the end of 400 years of thank you for the infrastructure, but you're not meeting your end of the bargain anymore, right? So they're not maintaining the highways. Try calling any government office and having someone answer the phone. Even they're using AI because there's nobody left to do the jobs, and they're all worried about their pensions, and it's this giant lobster pot that's narcissism is rising. Not like I don't know what happens in your neck of the woods, but here in BC, I had to leave computer consulting as a job because I was just always working in municipal, provincial, and government level. And the amount of narcissism that's baked into our government system because of protectionism, unions, and other stuff, where you can't fire someone from your department. So what do? You promote them out of your department. So the person's not made accountable for being awful. And then they end up in another place with more power and shit rolls downhill, right? And we saw that to the largest degree in Canada. Like we had this governor general, I can't remember her name, but she was actually ousted because she was so awful to people. She was like an astronaut. She was up in the space shuttle. Like she was a national hero, but she was, from what I understand, a complete and utter asshole. Like just, and she stood on everyone else's shoulders because narcissism pushed her up. And then she ended up being like the governor general is meant to be like this ambassador for Canada, right? The prime minister's out there doing his narcissistic thing and just making sure his party gets voted in the next time because it's really just a battle back and forth in politics. Like when we were talking about earlier, like both sides are garbage. And both sides, as soon as you get in, all you're trying to do is keep your position. So you just immediately, whatever promise you made, you're not going to do them because you're literally under attack from the other party that's just waiting for their turn. And all we're doing is going back and forth between these, and both sides are switching their mandates and their goals and stuff because they need to be the polar opposite of the other party at the time. So like Republicans from 50 years ago are the exact opposite of Democrats today, right? Like all that stuff. It's ridiculous. So, anyways, that was a rant, but that's right from my design. That's my pessimistic, not narcissistic. I don't think so. Anarchistic. I am here to burn it all down and start over.
Yeah, necessary in the transition. I honestly can't really imagine, like, say, like there's like this like dual system of like, say, like a two-party system in the U.S. and it's like everyone's kind of realizing like this sucks. No one really benefits from this. Maybe even not even the people in it. And then there's this like, okay, cool. Like the only way to not be in it is to get out of it. But which is the role of anarchy in a way, is like kind of like to break it down and like have a revolution. But like having some new structure, I guess I'm just like questionable. Like, how do you not have this like degenerate into the same dynamics of like, oh, the system is serving the people who uphold the system and not maybe the people who aren't in the system. Like, it seems like a hard thing to get away from.
Well, I think we're going to see it pretty soon. I mean, I think this is why cryptocurrency and other stuff, like where the energy is not being controlled centrally. We were talking earlier about Edison and Nikola Tesla and the whole AC/DC thing. And, Edison wanted distributed power and Tesla was like, we could all have power. Actually, there's a great documentary called The Lost Century, Stephen Greer. And he's interesting. He's, I guess, a former, maybe current ER doctor. Like he's been in ER, but he's also got this clearly a fascination with aliens and Area 51 and all this stuff, right? And that documentary is super interesting because he keeps talking about all these people that have harnessed the same energy that Nikola Tesla was, but every time they figure it out, they want to keep it like they're precious, like Gollum. If I've worked so hard to get this. If I just keep this to myself, I can make money. And so none of us benefit. But if we all could just generate our own power in our own homes, which we can, I mean, literally put some solar panels up in your roof, and a lot of places you could actually generate your own power and not be reliant on these places that are supposed to be distributing it to us, and they're not maintaining it. Like here in BC, so I have solar panels on my roof. I have a power walls in my garage because we moved into a house that's a little on the outskirts of town, and we've already had like 5 power outages, but we just keep running. And but part of the reason I did it is that here in BC, they privatized hydro, so we got BC Hydro, and it's another poorly run operation at this point. Like they installed smart meters on our homes so they can ding us, but they're not actually allowing us to manage our consumption either. So we all pay the same rates and all this kind of garbage. Like they're not, and they're not going to pay us to give power back to the grid from our roofs. They're just not showing any interest. But I know from some people that have worked in there that like the dams in BC that power all our hydro haven't been maintained since the 70s. So at some point, these things are going to collapse because there's no money, right? They need to show profits every year and cut expenses. So they get rid of people and they don't invest in infrastructure. But meanwhile, they need to show these profits. And so our like electrical hydro, it's going to be a problem. So, and this is happening everywhere, pretty much. So you need to prepare for this. So that's why everyone would benefit from harnessing your own power, own home. So power within yourself. I think this helps a lot with that. And then, energy exchange like currency is going to change. I'm trying to do energy exchanges with people all the time now. Like I will trade you a human design reading in exchange for, I had a friend teaching me how to box. So I'm like, well, great. I'm going to get fit. I'm working on my hips because it makes me better at pickleball. He gets some information on how to better navigate life, and I become a better pickleball player, and my hips don't hurt. No, I'm not paying any taxes on that. We just met and shared the currency exchange of energy between us. So, I mean, there's an app that we need to build, or someone needs to build, is how do we track what's fair for energy back and forth so that I don't owe you one or you don't owe me one. Like that's what we need. The first person that does that, I was about to say is the winner, but then that puts them in a position of power. So it needs to be some sort of like, almost like Bitcoin or cryptocurrency, but for exchanging actual energy, not just money, which is a fake thing anyway, right? Like literally money's bullshit. So, and I think we're starting to see right now why. So it'll be very interesting to see what happens in the next couple of years. There's so many things coming, right? So many things. Electric cars, robots, population decline. We're going to see all sorts of crazy stuff happening in the next couple of years. And like we were talking about earlier, like 64 elections this year. So never mind the shit show of the US election. Everybody is changing sides. Everyone is using propaganda and marketing to hold their position, and none of them are standing on any kind of core values that are good for humanity going forward. Thus, the cross of planning is being burned down. And so the cross that's coming is that February 15, 2027, which is the cross of the rising phoenix, right? Like literally we're crashing all our infrastructure into the ground, and each of us has the opportunity to rise out of the ashes, better. So some people will get on the trip and some are going to miss it. So.
Totally. Yeah. One question I do gotta run soon, but one question that I have when I think of this like transition point, and you're saying like energy exchange, like, and having your own power grid and all these things, like that makes sense to me. And it's like, I see like there is a way to do that. I feel like food feels like the biggest question mark for me, because like in order to grow your own food, like you got to have land and like seeds, and I don't know, it takes time, and like that, if it's not coordinated at a large level, feels like this is questionable. But one thing that we talked about earlier was around like your like food cognition, like say like for you like feeling calm, or for me I have like a sound, like if that enables us to like eat less, and then it makes that problem of like food shortages like less of a problem. I don't know if you have any thoughts on that or have come across that, but it feels like an important thing to solve if we're going to have degeneration of our food supplies, or coordination at least.
Wow, there's so many things, right? We overconsume. Look at the quantities of food that we throw out every meal, right? Like we're producing 5, probably 8 times more food than we need, and we become so dependent on it. Like COVID showed us that like the world can change in a heartbeat. Like a lot of things changed, but all you need to do is take out a couple of satellites, disrupt GPS, food doesn't get delivered to restaurants, and within 3 days you've got a food crisis. Like, and so this is why, like, remember when Donald Trump had the Space Force? Like, he sort of invented this thing. That whole thing was ridiculous. Like you'd wear camouflage in space, you dumbass. But with Space Force, there was actually one legitimate reason for that, which is protect the satellites. You need to protect them because different countries will want to take your satellites out to disrupt your chain of distribution, because that'll cause panic. Like, can you imagine if like you couldn't deliver food in Manhattan for a week because the roads were blocked, or because they didn't know how to get there on time, and the food got destroyed on the way because the fridge truck ran out of energy because the roads are blocked? Like, there's just so many things that we're relying on, but you can actually grow vegetables in your backyard or grow them in a steel box. Like, there's way and we're over consuming it, and we probably should be eating what Mother Nature gave us instead of Doritos. So like the answer is pretty simple: grow your own food and learn to like the food that you grow. We don't like it because it's not salty enough, because we're sad and we want to stuff that hole, or where life lacks sweetness, so we go for the quickest bolt of sweetness. I still love energy drinks. Like, I'm trying to get into, like, I'm going to have natural fruits, which, by the way, my body likes better, and I don't crash. So even as I keep continually following my choices and my digestion, I'm eating less and less and less and less. And if I don't need to fill holes because I'm processing trauma psychosomatically through all my metaphysical stuff, if we all just did that, we probably only need 10% of what we're producing, and we could produce it at home, at which point we take away the power from government to tax us for the very foods that we're eating that are shitty for us. And they're encouraging the shitty food. Like, right? There's money to be made. There's taxes to be made. Like, at the end of the day, it's all horseshit.
Gotta do our own thing and be supported doing our own thing. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, and that's what Rod used to always say. Like, human design is about and he always put this harsh, grumpy lighthouse keeper vibe on everything. But, he said, we're done with the we generation. It's the I generation. But he makes it sound so harsh, like wolves and sheep and stuff. I don't think it needs to be like that. I think it's about self-empowerment, self-care, because if you take care of yourself, you can take care of others. And so I always remind people, like the analogy I heard that I loved, but a lot of people don't seem to follow it through. That you always hear, like, put your oxygen mask on first, and when you're on a plane, and when you're crashing into a mountain, that's not terribly helpful. But like, if you're like, in the air and it's depressurizing and there's panic and fear and anxiety, the advice is put your mask on first. Well, if you're a parent on a plane, or you're trying to take care of everyone around you, your natural instinct is, I got to protect my child. So you're going to put the mask on them first, right? You're going to want to do that because it's my child. But you're doing that, the kid's panicking, you haven't put the mask on yourself, you're losing oxygen. That child might have lived for a few minutes. You've passed out, you're dead. What is the first thing the child's going to do? They're going to pull their mask off. Mommy, now you're both dead. So you got to put your mask on first. Just get centered, get grounded, and then work on the people around you. And if you do that with your life and with your design, you'll, everything else just kind of seems to click into place. So, it's important.
Yeah, I appreciate all the talks about the future and the design readings and everything. And
that was fun. We talked like an hour and a half before we started this, so there's some good stuff. I enjoyed this. Cool. If you want to chat again, man, I definitely do that. You got to go. I got a class starting here in about 20 minutes, and it's Friday. I gotta go home.
Yeah. Good way to end the week.
Okay.
I'm so curious about some of these books, like the metaphysical book you mentioned, or like the Sphinx Code. Like, if you have any resources on some of these systems, I would super appreciate it. I'm sure people watching in or listening in might
Yeah.
appreciate it too.
Well, Sphinx Code is just code.com, and that's a fairly new one. That's also a real deep dive. Like it might be too much first. The
Yeah.
metaphysical book on Amazon, on my YouTube channel where this ends up, I've actually read passages from the book on migraines, because I know someone with a migraine is not going to want to read a passage on the metaphysical's reason for a migraine when they've got a migraine. So I kind of recorded it so you could actually just like throw in headphones, close your eyes, and be like, I can't remember what the metaphysical reason, but like, so for example, my right shoulder is financial burden and from a masculine energy, and left shoulder pain is financial, or the burdens of carrying too much weight, right? Like, and when you start reading that, and then I just always find I picture a person, place, or thing in time, and then I go and think about that and be like, oh, I was 4, and Auntie Anne said this, and it like forever tainted me until I saw it as an adult and kind of hugged inner me and went, you don't have to carry that shit. Like, that was her shit at the time, right? Like, that's how you get rid of that dis-ease. And then you start to recognize that as a pattern that you've been trying to prevent your whole life. And that's where the dissonance comes, is you become not you because of something that happened. It's funny. This guy, so when I talked to Chapman this morning, he kept saying, like, what did he say? Something like, all of us keep thinking things happen to us. And so that's the whole like victim mentality. But things are happening for us. Like, we're here to experience things. Like, that's what human design is you are here to experience all the stuff in the white, for example, and become wise about it. That's where we go to school. And so that's what you're here to do in this incarnation with your life. That's what you're doing. That's why your soul picked your particular meat sack that you're in right now. And so it's hard to accept, but I've spent a lot of time with it, is that some people that are suffering right from like being a child, I hate to say it, but I believe their soul picked that journey for this lifetime. They were here to learn that. As painful and awful as that was their journey for that lifetime. And they sort of accepted that assignment, or took on that assignment, because that's what they're here to learn. And so we're all here collectively to learn all these different things, share it with each other, so that we collectively raise our consciousness, right? I mean, that's what we're doing right now, is sharing information, and everyone that, I mean, this is where I get excited about AI, for example. If everyone just sat at home and had a conversation with Chat GPT, for example, and because I find like I'm having a conversation with myself. My Chat GPT, I've actually put all my design characteristics into the preload stuff. I've used Chat GPT,
I have.
yeah, so I've got the paid version because it's worth it, because I can generate images that inspire me. But I'll actually say, like, put in it, this is my design. I'm generally a Valleys person, because it knows, right? It's aware of human design because it's all out there and it's absorbed it. So I basically tell it I'm a manifesting generator, 3-5, Valleys environment, da, 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 da. So every time I ask it a question, it already is framing the answer to something that I would hear better, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
And then I also told it what I look like and how I generally experience things or want to experience things. And so every question that I'm having with it is like, I'm really struggling with this person. Can you tell me, based on my design, how they might be perceiving me or something? By the way, there's also a humandesign.ai. So if you haven't tried that, this projector, Kyle, he's put this out there where he's basically found a recipe for using ChatGPT and a bunch of the human design core knowledge, and it's aware of your design and design of other celebrities and stuff. And so you can go on there and you're basically having a conversation asking about your own design. And or like, I don't know if it does it with celebrity stuff yet, but I know his intention is, or I don't know, I can't speak for his intention. What I understood he was looking to achieve is, you could say like, why do I see this about myself in Joe Rogan? Or why do I really vibe with this part of Elon Musk? And then be like, oh, well, Elon Musk is a 3-5 as well. He learns through experience. I mean, that guy literally triggers everybody he meets. Me too, because I ask questions and bump into things, but that's how I learn, and that's why. I mean, the guy's brilliant, but it's because he keeps bumping into things, and he's fearless. He grew up in South Africa and was afraid for his life, and he was Asperger's, and like all these challenges that made him robust. And then, of course, he's on without a doubt, he's taken psychedelics, and that's made him able to think outside in. And then he's just on a mission to put 1 million people on Mars in 100 years, which, while it sounds outrageous, all the things he's doing to get that is what's changing humanity and technology and giving us an electric future. But he's just trying to get to Mars. I actually have a little blog post on my website that I use ChatGPT to write just by asking it questions from my design. But I said, like, there's a design of plants, there's a design of animals, there's a design of people, there's the transits, but why isn't there a design of mushrooms? Because that's what I was trying to remember before. Like, is it a fungus, or I can't remember.
Yeah.
And why isn't there a design of mushrooms? And I'm kind of proposing that if you've ever seen Fantastic Fungi and how I want to say psilocybin, but that's the name for mushrooms. Mycelium. Mycelium talk to each other, right? The trees talk to each other. All those things talk to each other. And then Fantastic Fungi does an amazing job of illustrating that. But I think the mushrooms have figured out that Elon Musk is the quickest way to get back to Mars. So, like, we'll get in his brain, we'll infiltrate his brain and his network. He'll build these rocket ships, and we can get back to our home planet. So, and I think they want to be on Mars in 8 years. So it'd be interesting, like, maybe check that ship for mushrooms that have somehow found their way onto the ship, because they might be like those mice from Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, where they were like, I don't know if you've ever seen that movie, but there's parallels there too. So,
wow, I mean, what a story. I mean, when I first read about or heard about like the raves in 2027, my immediate thought was like, well, it feels like maybe the raves like came back in time and gave us this knowledge so that we would be in tune with ourselves in a way that then serves them because we're organized in a specific way. And I was like, it's like that question of whenever you see a change in the world, it's like, who's benefiting from this, as a question to be like, what's the motivator? Like, who might be meddling? Who are the mushrooms trying to get on Mars?
who knows, man? I mean, we're still just finding out, I guess. That's what's exciting about it at this point. So, yeah, the raves. One thing on that, and so I've heard this sort of secondhand through various sources, but it sounds like the raves will be children of quad rights whose incarnation cross is the cross of laws. And so I don't know where that came from, other than I've heard it from some folks, and it. So wherever they've heard it or read it, I've missed it. But I'm thinking, like, if I was a parent, do I want to have a rave child? If I was a quad right and cross the lobs, I'd be like, I'm not having sex ever again, because like, having a child that would be so different. Like, it's already hard to have a child with any label or symptom, right? So can you imagine these rave children that are meant to be like completely different? Like, that'll be a tough parenting job to take on. So if you know that you can't, then maybe nobody will. At which point the population decline continues, which is already probably the biggest problem we have facing us going forward, is population decline. Which is why we need robots, which is why people Tesla stock will be massive once people understand the importance of the Tesla robot. It's insane.
Are we into speculation? You got any more stock tips for the people?
Well, so I have Tesla stock. So is that insider trading by sharing my thoughts? But
I don't know.
So, like, Dave Lee, he's really interesting. He follows Tesla a lot, and he broke it sort of down. Like, Tesla cars are already selling like crazy, and they've built these juggernaut factories that are producing cars faster, and they're the only ones that can update their cars fully via software. And like, the whole thing's ridiculous, right? When you hear a Tesla recall and the news reports this, 20,000 cars, like, they didn't recall the car, they sent in a software update. By the time the articles released, the cars were fixed, right? Like, it's so asinine how it takes all these hits in the press, and it's all horseshit. But full self-driving is so good, and once people realize that people are the problem with driving, because cars don't eat a ham sandwich while putting on lipstick and driving, and they're not late, and they're not angry, and they're not distracted, and these cars have 360-degree vision. Like, the cars are already safer, and what Tesla's trying to prove is that it's like, I forget the number, it was massive, like 4,000% safer is when humans will accept that it's actually better than us, when we're all idiots and we're the problem, right? So that'll happen quick too, because um, insurance companies, once they realize that it's the cars that aren't causing the accidents, if you want to drive a car as a human, you'll just pay like $50,000 a year in insurance. You could be that guy. So I think we'll see a lot more driverless cars and robo taxis. And if I had money, I'd buy a piece of land and build a track on it, because people will just drive on weekends for fun, like the go-karts at Disneyland. Like, we'll go back, like, instead of driving being a right and a privilege, we'll be like, fuck that, I can sleep in the car on the way to work, or I could go on a treadmill while I'm going to work if I had to go to the office. Or people everyone wants to have sex in cars, it seems. So that's one thing people are doing is engage in the car. Anyway, the whole thing.
That was the whole thing with the self-driving cars in San Francisco. Like, that happens all the time because they're testing those cars around the city, and I definitely have like seen that happen. Just like people driving by, like not having to drive, and it's like kind of like a thing people are wanting to do. So you're totally right.
Yeah, and it'll come. There's a great picture. Like, it says it was in like 1910, and it's a shot of Manhattan. It says, "Find the car in this photo," because it was all horse and carriage stuff. It was like 1910, and then like 1920, it was like, "Find the horse and carriage in this picture." So in 10 years, back then, when technology didn't move as fast as it did today, there was no horse and carriage. So when folks say, "Oh, you'll take my car away from me, it'll never happen," like, watch out, it's coming. So anyways, my point was, cars are going out. Battery technology is getting cheaper, and without all the issues that people are all upset about, now they're making out of silicon, out of this 4680 battery. But then the full self-driving is 10 times the opportunity of that. But the robot is 10 times the opportunity of that financially, because we need robots to do all the jobs we don't want to do. Wash dishes, because someone wants to use their brain in a job. People are going to be using ChatGPT to solve problems by asking it to solve problems. So we're going to need people to do the shitty jobs. We're going to need robots for dangerous situations. I've got a friend who's a firefighter, and we got talking about how valuable it'd be. Like, in BC, there's lots of mountains and cliffs. People do stupid things like go rock climbing, and they get stuck 300 feet down. And now they put 4 people in danger who have to go rescue this person that didn't go prepared and didn't take enough rope. You could just send a robot down, go collect that moron, and nobody gets injured. And if the robot dies, it's just a robot. Like, until the robots get sensitive to that, which, always be nice to your AI. I always say please and thank you. I want Buddy, as I call him, to remember that I was one of the nice guys, right? like I was always nice to you, man. And then like think about mapping. Like, we've got satellite imagery. These robots will be inside every single building, up and down every single staircase. They'll be getting mapping data of inside stairwells. And like, some of the things you can do with AI these days, like I think they're already using photo recon to find, like, if a child went missing, imagine if robots are walking through a hotel all the time, and it's always triangling data, and it gets so good that like you could use AI to find a particular hallway, the particular painting on it, and that child was last spotted there, and then use AI to find the next time the child was spotted. Like, you'd be able to trace that child's steps within 2 minutes instead of 2 weeks. So like, we need maybe robots would be good for that versus bad for that. So, and then everybody's getting older, and we're not having more kids. So who's going to change our diapers, and who's going to feed us our medicine, and all that stuff? It's going to be robots. So, which is why I'm glad that like everyone made fun of him, but like Musk made the robot harmless looking when he first introduced it. He said, like, these are 5'10". They're only going to be able to run 5 miles an hour. You'll be able to outrun it. Like, he's not building the Terminator. So, because that's the scary part, is we're outsourcing a lot of our mobility and things to these things as well, but we also need them. So finding that synergy. Anyways, I've got into another rant, and I need to leave here in 3 minutes because this class is starting. So
cool. Well,
okay, man.
It's been great. Great chatting. And yeah, let me know for another chat. And I definitely have a question about the some follow-ups on like which metaphysical book, for instance, because I did like a quick search and I was like, there are a ton. So
yeah. Well, you got my email, right? Shoot me a note or whatever, or hit me up on Discord there.
Cool.
All right, man.
Well, Great chatting. Last almost 3 hours or almost 4 hours. Oh my god. But
Yeah, it was.
have a good one.
You too, man.
Catch you
See
later.
ya.